Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geneva Convention, where we have gathered Illwinter's most aggressive diplomats to discuss mythical war crimes in the mountains. As this is my first casting game, I might not do everything right, so I'm really going to depend on you guys to leave in the comments below any sort of suggestions, tips, or just things that I might have missed. I'm also going to try and summarize a lot of the messages that the players do. It's a very verbose cast, and I'm very grateful for it because it's going to let us see into the minds and plans of what these diplomats are doing. However, I can't really read each message word for word, so I'm going to try to summarize it and flash it on screen in case that you guys might want to pause and read it yourselves. I'm also not going to go into every single battle that every player does. It might take too long and mess with the pacing. So what I'm going to try to do is if I see a very interesting battle, I'll stop and check that. I'll also look at maybe standard battles the nation might do and how they use early research to help them expand. If you haven't played or seen Dominions 5 played before, this is probably a good opportunity to watch a bunch of skilled diplomats use their armies to aggressively discuss mythical war crime policies and kind of get a feel of how these games start with an expansion phase, move on to maybe an early war or period of consolidation, and then very, very quickly start progressing toward a near apocalypse scenario where all these pretender gods are vying for absolute divinity. And speaking of divinity, let's now introduce our diplomats and politicians. We have War Never Changes of Ulm, a nation of barbaric humans favoring stealth and hand-to-hand combat. We have I Can't Believe It's Not Pigus from Marvarni, a nation of druidic humans worshipping swine and stars. We have I Believe I Can Fly from Kalem, a nation of literal birdmen. We have Mishal from Chirnog, a nation of fancy elves who write poetry. The Boring Option, the diplomat representative from Helheim, which are the same fancy elves, but instead of poetry, they're into heavy Viking metal. We have He Who Laughs from Niflheim, a nation of peaceful frost giants who want eternal holidays. We have Kailaisa, but the Sacreds Are Ugly, which is a nation of shiny and shirtless demi-giants with their monkey retinue. We have a Shiny Rock from Lanka, which is a nation of demonic animal-headed demi-giants and their monkey retinue. We have Under Daog, the Hidden, from Yomi, which is a nation of a bunch of tiny goblins, really big goblins, even bigger goblins, and witches. We have Legally Distinct Mount Doom from Hinnom, a nation of pale giants who really miss their dads. We have Long Paws from Macone, which is Sparta. And we have Hezekiah from Ubar, a nation of malicious genies and their human slaves. The final nation would be led by myself, the Cafecito caster, who hopefully I do a great job in casting the rigorous and often violent debate of all these nations and their diplomats. And the stage for this debate will be Lucid's experimental mountain arena map. All the nations have already been cordoned into their corners, and we're going to start with Hinnom, who looks to have a fairly easy expansion, just a bunch of infantry. There are elephants here in Lombaria and barbarians here as well, but they're going to start with Cynocephalians in their cap circle and Jade Amazons not far out. The nearest throne has Hoburgs, so it's probably very easy for them to take. So that's not a bad start at all. We'll go down to Ulm and find that they have Crystal Amazons in their cap circle, which is absolutely fantastic. They also have elephants to their south, some barbarians, and oh, it looks like Bloodhenge Druids. That's going to be no good for them. Bloodhenge Druids are very deadly to Eelmushmen. But they do have a clear line of expansion out of their little cap circle, straight into Knights, but into a very nice province, a double farm. So I think if they rush out of their cap circle, they're good. If they stick around, they might have some trouble. But I do see here that they have the steel ovens nearby, and if they get that, they're going to be in a very good position. Yomi is south of Ulm, and to note, none of these nations are actually connected directly to each other due to the nature of the map. I'm just doing this more for my own organization. So Yomi south of them also looks to have a pretty simple expansion. Other than to their north where they have some elephants, everything else seems to just be hordes of militia or tribesmen. but they pay for that ease of expansion with no real interesting independent mages nearby. Kailasa, south of them, has barbarians, militia. There might be elephants here, but I don't think so. It might just be heavy infantry. But it's otherwise a pretty easy expansion, and actually these monkey nations don't need to fear barbarians too much. A lot of their units have very high defense skill and ranged weapons that are actually pretty effective against the relatively unarmored barbarians. So although their expansion is traditionally tricky, most of the options they have here are actually pretty simple for them depending on what units to use. I'll look forward to seeing how they end up doing it. Now we're going to go to our right and move to Lanka, who has Jades in their cap circle, which is good. Oh, it looks like war elephants to the north, some barbarians, and some cavalry, so that can be tricky for them. But it's very nice that they have Jades early. Jades are always great for almost any nation, really, but they can get very expensive to use in the early age. Breaking out of their actual circle is going to run into some cataphracts, but Lankan sacreds are pretty tough. Our diplomat from Ubar has unfortunately found the living statue and golem camp south of him. It's variable what they might find there. There's a lot of magical items involved, and this can be a very tough independent province to take. It's unlikely they'll take it anytime soon, and the fact that it's the golem and not the Cyclops is actually kind of unfortunate, because if it was the Cyclops, they might have been able to corrupt or seduce him, depending on what stats they got as an independent. Other than that, they have Crystal Amazons nearby and Bone Tribe nearby, and that's winning the lottery right there for independent mages to have nearby. They have an easy province here in Abi. It doesn't look like there's war elephants in either of these two, but they're Jin, and Jin are going to have a very easy time expanding regardless. Helheim to their south has a large amount of barbarians in their cap circle and some heavy cav in the corner, but otherwise it looks relatively easy for them. And then they have lizard shamans and hobergs nearby, so they might also want to rush out of their cap circle, but they might not be able to do it through this province. This is an unfortunate start in the sense that it's really easy, but the stuff they want, they're not even going to know that they want these because they won't see them. Because I'm not sure about you, but I would probably avoid this province with barbarians as long as possible. Magons to their south got to start with some Crystal Amazons, and everything else looks dirt easy. You spam some Peltasts, and this problem is all solved. This is actually so far probably one of the easier expansions, and they should be able to just rush out the gate without being impeded at all by these independents. And they'll be gifted later with some farm hobergs. And we're back to Lanka, so let's move back over to Niflheim, who has some easy options, but to their right and left, unfortunately, they're going to have these shades in a cave, which can be a tough province to take without magic weapons, especially early on, and also some heavy cavalry, which could also be an issue. Then, as they try to leave their circle, they have these barbarians, a lot of barbarians, which are pretty good against giants, and Bone Tribe, which are just deadly. The Bone Tribes are pretty good paths, but getting through them is going to be tough. No one likes fighting them. South, we have Kalem, who also has pretty good expansion, with no strong indies around them. Unfortunately, they're going to run into undead as they try to leave, which is unfortunate. Very unfortunate. But otherwise, their starting circle seems pretty tame. The only bad thing is they don't get anything out of it. So I guess they'll have an easy time expanding, but they're not really going to gain any independent mages or fancy provinces from it. And then they get penalized with these two undead provinces on their way out. That sucks. Marverni's down here. And we actually see they have an awake Gorgon, Pigus. Or I can't believe it's not Pigus. I love me my Gorgon expanders. The Petrify effect on them is so strong, I can't wait to see it. So for them, they do have Bone Tribe as well, which is going to be fantastic because they have the paths to craft crystal gear and add those Bone Tribe into the Communion and easy access to Wailing Winds right there. They have some easier options, but two Barbarian camps and Horse Tribe up north, I think it's a good thing that they have that Awake Expander. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Outside the ring, I don't really see any other fancy independents. They have some lizard shamans down here, but they don't really need those. So I guess they just take the Bone Tribe home and they're happy with it. So now we're at the nation of Tirnanog, and they also look rather tame. Oh, I see some lizard shamans on the way out. Okay. Their actual cap circle itself could potentially be tough. Oh, they have a Windmaster province. Oh no. Hopefully they took some sort of shock resistance for Tirnanog. If they did, they should be okay. The heavy cav can be spooky, but Twist Fate tends to do well against the cav. We'll see. They've got it both ways, and then they have a horde of barbarians down south, covering a very good province. So they might not want to fight these barbarians for a while, but they'll regret it. They'll regret having held off on doing it once they do take the province. That brings us back to Niflheim and the end of our starting position review, I guess. So I think I'll stop this here, and the next episode, or which I guess would be the first of actually casting expansion and reading messages, we'll finally get started.